For years he believed his wife had died giving birth to their son. The doctors told him. The death certificate was signed. He mourned, he buried an empty coffin, and he tried to move on. But when his autistic son started drawing the same woman's face over and over, a woman he had never seen in photos, everything he knew began to fall apart. What he discovered didn't just bring back the dead, it exposed a lie so cruel it destroyed everyone who kept it. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. Michael Sterling stood at a grave that held nothing. The marble headstone read, Rebecca Sterling, beloved wife and mother, 1989-2018. For 6 years, he had visited this spot every month, placing fresh flowers on grass that covered no body. He didn't know that, of course. He believed his wife had died giving birth to their son, Joshua. The doctors had told him. A nurse had handed him papers. A death certificate bore an official signature and seal. He had cried, made arrangements, and held a funeral where friends and family gathered around a closed casket. Everyone told him how sorry they were. No one told him the truth. Joshua was 6 years old now, diagnosed with autism at age 3. He didn't speak much, only a few words here and there, and rarely made eye contact. But he was obsessed with drawing. Every day he filled pages with crayons, markers, and colored pencils. Most of the images were abstract, shapes, lines, patterns that repeated endlessly. Michael had learned not to interpret them too literally. Therapists said it was Joshua's way of processing the world, creating order out of chaos. Michael accepted that. He kept the drawings in folders, celebrated Joshua's focus, and never questioned what the images meant. But recently, something changed. Over the past 2 months, Joshua had started drawing faces, always the same face. A woman with long dark hair, soft eyes, and a gentle smile. She appeared on every page, sometimes large and centered, sometimes small in the corner, but always there. Michael noticed, but didn't think much of it at first. Children drew people all the time. Maybe Joshua had seen someone on television or at the park. Maybe it was a character from a book his aide read to him at school. Michael asked casually one evening, pointing at the drawing, "Who's this, buddy?" Joshua didn't answer. He just kept coloring, filling in the woman's hair with careful strokes of dark brown. The drawings continued. One morning, Michael walked into Joshua's room and found a new picture taped to the wall. The woman again, but this time with more detail. She wore a yellow dress. Her hands were open, reaching forward as if offering an embrace. Michael felt a strange tightness in his chest. He didn't know why. He pulled the drawing down and studied it closely. There was something familiar about the face, something that tugged at a memory he couldn't place. He shook his head, put the drawing back, and left for work. "It's just a drawing," he told himself. "Just a drawing." That evening, Joshua drew again. This time he used markers, his small hand moving quickly across the page. When he finished, he stood up and walked over to Michael, holding the paper out. Michael took it, expecting another version of the same woman. He was right, but this one was different. In the bottom corner, Joshua had drawn a second figure, a small child holding the woman's hand. Above them, in shaky letters, were 2 words Joshua must have copied from somewhere or remembered from a lesson. The words said, "Mama, me." Michael stared at the paper. His heart started to race. "Mama?" he asked quietly. "Josh, who is this?" Joshua didn't respond. He rocked slightly on his feet, a self-soothing motion he did when overwhelmed. Michael knelt down to his son's level. "Buddy, is this someone you know?" Joshua looked past him, not making eye contact, but whispered one word, "Mama." Michael felt the floor shift under him. Joshua had never seen his mother. There were no photos of Rebecca displayed in the house. After her death, Michael had packed everything away, unable to bear the constant reminders. The few pictures he kept were in a locked drawer in his office. Joshua had never opened that drawer. He couldn't have. So how was he drawing a face that looked, now that Michael thought about it, eerily similar to Rebecca? That night, after Joshua went to bed, Michael sat in his office with the door closed. He unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk and pulled out a small photo album. He hadn't opened it in over a year. The first picture showed Rebecca on their wedding day, smiling in a white dress, her dark hair falling over her shoulders. The second showed her laughing at the beach, wearing a yellow sundress, the same yellow dress. Michael's hands shook. He placed Joshua's drawing next to the photos and compared them. The resemblance was undeniable. The shape of the eyes, the curve of the lips, the way the hair framed the face. It was her. But how? Michael couldn't sleep that night. His mind raced through possibilities, none of them making sense. Children didn't draw people they'd never seen with such accuracy. Therapists said autistic children often had strong visual memories, but Joshua had no memory of Rebecca to draw from. Unless he did. But that was impossible. Rebecca was dead. Michael had been told she died from complications during childbirth. Hemorrhaging, cardiac arrest. He'd signed papers, he'd buried her, except he hadn't. Not really. The casket had been closed. The hospital had insisted on it, said it was better that way, that he should remember her as she was. He'd agreed, too devastated to argue. The next morning, Michael called the hospital where Rebecca had given birth. He asked to speak to someone in records. After being transferred twice, he reached a woman who sounded tired and uninterested. "I need information about a patient from 6 years ago," he said. "Rebecca Sterling. She gave birth on March 14th, 2018. The records show she died that day." There was a pause, then typing. "Let me check," the woman said. More typing. A longer pause. "I'm showing a birth record for Joshua Sterling on that date, but I'm not seeing a death certificate filed under that name in our system." Michael's heart stopped. "What do you mean you're not seeing it?" "I have a death certificate. It was signed by Dr. Caldwell." "Sir, I'm just telling you what's in our system. If you have a certificate, I suggest you bring it in, and we can verify it. But right now, I don't see any record of a death on that date under that name." Michael hung up. His mind was spinning. He went back to his office, pulled out a file cabinet, and found the folder labeled Rebecca Final Documents. Inside was the death certificate. He read it again, this time slowly. The signature at the bottom belonged to Dr. Raymond Caldwell, the obstetrician who had delivered Joshua. The hospital seal was embossed in the corner. Everything looked official, but if the hospital had no record, then what was this? Michael decided to go to the hospital in person. He brought the certificate, the photos, and one of Joshua's drawings. He demanded to speak to someone in administration. After an hour of waiting, he was brought into a small office where a man in a suit introduced himself as the hospital's legal coordinator. Michael laid everything on the desk. "I was told my wife died here 6 years ago. I have this certificate. But your records say she didn't. I need to know what happened." The coordinator examined the certificate carefully. He frowned, picked up his phone, and made a call. After a brief conversation, he hung up and looked at Michael. "Mr. Sterling, this certificate has a forged seal. Dr. Caldwell's signature is real, but the seal doesn't match our current or historical records. This document should not have been issued." Michael felt like the room was closing in. "What are you saying?" The coordinator leaned forward. "I'm saying someone falsified this document. Your wife's death was never officially recorded by this hospital. According to our files, Rebecca Sterling was discharged 3 days after giving birth, alive and in stable condition." Michael's vision blurred. "That's impossible. I was told she died." "Who told me that?" The coordinator pulled up a file on his computer. The attending nurse that day was Sandra Hewitt. She left the hospital 2 months after your son was born. No forwarding information. Dr. Caldwell retired 4 years ago, but I can try to reach him if you'd like. Michael nodded, unable to speak. The coordinator made another call, left a message, and promised to contact Michael as soon as he heard back. Michael left the hospital in a daze. If Rebecca hadn't died, then where was she? Why had someone told him she was dead? Why had there been a funeral, a burial, a grave? His phone rang. It was the coordinator. "Mr. Sterling, Dr. Caldwell just called me back. He says he remembers your wife's case. He'd like to meet with you. Can you come back tomorrow?" The next day, Michael sat across from Dr. Caldwell in a quiet coffee shop. The doctor was older now, grey-haired and slow-moving, but his eyes were sharp. "I remember Rebecca," he said. "I remember because what happened that day has bothered me ever since." Michael leaned forward. "What happened?" Dr. Caldwell sighed. "Your wife gave birth without complications. Mother and baby were healthy, but hours later a woman came into the recovery room. She said she was Rebecca's sister. I'd never met her before, but Rebecca seemed to know her. The woman insisted Rebecca needed immediate specialized care for a condition I hadn't diagnosed. She had paperwork, transfer documents, all seemingly legitimate. I was suspicious, but the woman was very convincing, and Rebecca seemed willing to go." "Go where?" Michael asked, his voice shaking. "I don't know," Dr. Caldwell admitted. "I tried to follow up, but I was told the transfer was handled privately. Then a few days later, Sandra Hewitt, the nurse, told me Rebecca had died during the transfer and that the family had requested privacy. I was horrified. I asked to see the death report, but Sandra said it was being handled externally. I should have pushed harder, but I was overwhelmed with other cases and frankly, I trusted Sandra. I didn't realize until much later that none of it was filed properly. By then, Sandra was gone, and I had no way to track what really happened." Michael felt sick. "So someone took my wife and told me she was dead. Who? Why?" Dr. Caldwell shook his head. "I don't know. But if your son is drawing her, maybe he's seen her. Children, especially those with autism, sometimes retain memories others think they've forgotten." Michael's mind raced. Joshua had been only a few hours old when Rebecca allegedly died. But what if he'd seen her after that? What if somehow he'd been with her? Michael hired a private investigator named Karen Moss. He showed her everything, the drawings, the forged certificate, the hospital records, Dr. Caldwell's statement. Karen listened carefully, took notes, and then said, "This sounds like an abduction masked as a medical transfer. If your wife is alive, someone has been keeping her hidden for 6 years. We need to find Sandra Hewitt." It took Karen 2 weeks to track Sandra down. She was living under a different name in a small town 3 hours away, working as a home care assistant. Karen arranged a meeting, bringing Michael along. When Sandra opened the door and saw Michael, her face went pale. "I wondered when you'd find me," she said quietly. They sat in her small living room. Sandra looked older than her years, tired and worn. "I'm not proud of what I did," she began, "but I didn't have a choice." "Who made you do it?" Michael demanded. Sandra hesitated, then said, "Rebecca's mother, Eleanor." Michael froze. Eleanor had died 2 years before Rebecca gave birth, or so he'd been told. "Eleanor's alive?" Sandra nodded. "Very much alive. She faked her own death because she didn't approve of your marriage. She thought you weren't good enough for Rebecca, that you'd trapped her. When Rebecca got pregnant, Eleanor became obsessed with the idea that she needed to save her daughter and grandchild from you. She had money, connections, and a plan. She paid me to help her take Rebecca after the birth. She had forged documents, a private medical team, everything. I falsified the death certificate using Dr. Caldwell's stolen signature stamp. I told you Rebecca died. I'm sorry." Michael could barely breathe. "Where is she?" Sandra wrote down an address. "Eleanor moved Rebecca to a private facility. It's not a hospital. It's more like a compound. Rebecca was told you didn't want her, that you'd rejected her and the baby. Eleanor convinced her you'd moved on. For the first year, Rebecca tried to leave, but Eleanor had her declared mentally unstable. After that, Rebecca stopped trying. She's been there ever since. Michael stood up, shaking with rage and grief. My son has been drawing his mother because somehow he remembers her, and you let this happen. Sandra looked down. I was paid a lot of money, but it's haunted me every day since. If you go to the police, I'll confess everything. Michael and Karen went to the address Sandra provided. It was a large estate surrounded by tall gates and security cameras. Karen contacted local authorities, and with Sandra's confession and the forged documents as evidence, they obtained a warrant. Police arrived the next morning. Eleanor was arrested on charges of kidnapping, fraud, and falsifying official documents. Inside the estate, in a private wing of the house, they found Rebecca. She was sitting in a sunlit room reading a book. When Michael walked in, she looked up, confused. "Do I know you?" she asked. Michael's heart shattered. "Rebecca, it's me, Michael, your husband." Rebecca's eyes widened. "Michael?" "But my mother said you didn't want me. She said you'd left." Michael knelt beside her. "I never left. I thought you were dead. I've been raising Joshua, our son, alone for 6 years. Your mother lied to both of us." Tears filled Rebecca's eyes as the truth settled in. "Joshua, is he okay?" Michael nodded. "He's the one who led me to you. He kept drawing your face. I didn't understand until now. Somehow, he remembered you." Rebecca broke down, sobbing. "I want to see him, please." The reunion was quiet and careful. Joshua didn't rush to Rebecca or call her Mama out loud. But when she knelt down and showed him one of his drawings, he looked at her, really looked, and placed his small hand in hers. For the first time in 6 years, Rebecca held her son. Michael stood nearby, watching the scene unfold, tears streaming down his face. The lie had stolen years from all of them, but Joshua's drawings had brought the truth back. Eleanor was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Sandra Hewitt received a reduced sentence in exchange for her testimony. Dr. Caldwell issued a formal apology and assisted in clearing Rebecca's medical records. Michael and Rebecca began the long process of rebuilding their family, attending therapy together and reintroducing Joshua to his mother slowly and gently. Joshua continued to draw, but now he drew all 3 of them together, a man, a woman, and a boy, holding hands. The truth doesn't always speak with words. Sometimes it speaks through the persistent, silent language of a child who simply wouldn't forget.